The Philadelphia 76ers have dropped their second consecutive game during their West Coast trip, this time at the hands of the Los Angeles Lakers, before they face on the Los Angeles Clippers tomorrow. But in this video, I want to talk a little bit about something different. There's a little bit of an off-court spat brewing between Patrick Beverley and Mo Bamba. Of course, Mo Bamba, the current Sixers center, guy that's been starting and doing a pretty solid job in recent weeks as we still await the return of Joel Embiid. And Pat Bev, a guy who has had his ups and downs in the Sixers world. And I think he was a beloved player during the half a season that he was here. Ultimately was shipped off at the trade deadline in exchange for Cam Payne and a second-round pick. Cam Payne, who, by the way, continues to be a fairly reliable spark plug off the bench. Been very impressed with what he's brought to the team. But I do want to talk a little bit about the Pat Bev and Mo Bamba comments. So I want to start off and set the stage the right way. I do want to attack this topic a little bit delicately. There is a lot in here that I don't feel properly equated to speak on or have an opinion on, but I do want to make sure I bring this to light and highlight what was said. So I want to start off with what exactly happened here and begin with the Pat Bev portion here. So they're being written saying Milwaukee Bucks star, which is generous to say, Milwaukee Bucks star Patrick Beverley is facing backlash for sharing a list of who he thinks is, quote, the whitest black guys in the NBA. Beverley revealed his controversial list on his podcast, the Pat Bev Podcast, with co-host Adam Ferrone. Let's get right to it. People want to see it. Beverley said on the podcast, we did the blackest white guys. I'm reading the comments, and I like to read comments. You guys should do the whitest, blackest five. Cavaliers center Jared Allen, Pacers center Miles Turner, 76ers center Mo Bamba, Hornets forward Grant Williams, and Pelicans guard CJ McCollum all made Beverley's whitest black guy list. So obviously not a huge surprise. This is a topic that ruffles some feathers, and frankly, I think that it should, that there is a lot to discuss here, and you understand the concept of being upset but being mentioned. And at the forefront of this being Mo Bamba. So I want to jump into what Mo Bamba specifically said, and he kind of went from the jugular right off the bat here, saying, all right, I got time today at Pat Bev Pod. I'm a top 5 black white guy because I can properly articulate how I feel and how I see things. You a smart man. Do your research. I'm not a gangster to any capacity, but I'm born and raised from Harlem. I made it off the block and out the trenches. So for starters, good for Mo for kind of sticking up for himself. I've been fairly negative about Mo Bamba throughout his tenure with the Sixers. He is still a player that underwhelms me on the court, and I've been frustrated. But as a human being and as a teammate, I've been really impressed with the things that he's doing. It's the little things that you notice throughout the game. Being the first guy to help a teammate up after he's knocked down, being the first guy to celebrate after a big shot. Even some of his comments in the postgame have been exactly what you hope to hear and see in a teammate. So that has impressed me and stood out. And frankly, for a guy who likely is going to stick around the league as a fringe backup center type player, that's important. That you should be making these types of relationships, proving that you can be a plus character guy on a team. And I do like that he kind of stuck up for himself here. And he also brings up a really valid point in general. And I want to dive a little more deeper into that with this second tweet here. And he says, secondly, sitting there with your legs crossed like that and asking your white co-host to publicly question my blackness is one of the reasons why it's hard to move the culture forward. At Pat Bev Pod, at Dr. Umar Johnson. So clearly that Mo Bamba with some strong feelings on that. And again, rightfully so, that you are allowed to feel however you do feel about this particular topic. There is a lot of underlying tones that I don't want to fully address or get into here. Again, I don't feel properly equated to have an opinion on a lot of this, but I do think it's important to bring it to light that this is an issue going on, and these are two guys having a difference of opinion. Now, from Pat Bev's side of things, I like viewing this in a lighthearted view, that I don't think this was meant with poor intentions, and I think this is something that he didn't expect, this type of reaction. I know that they did the quote-unquote blackest white guys in the previous episode, bring up Tyler Hero, Garrison Matthews, Alex Caruso. I forget who else cracked that list. I am a guy who is a fan of the Pat Bev Pod. I am a quote-unquote real one, as they say on that one. I've watched since that podcast started. It was much more fun when he was on the Sixers and there was stuff that related, but it has been left a sour taste in my mouth of late since he has been joining the Milwaukee Bucks and really kind of running his mouth a little more than should be the case, which is honestly kind of the story with Pat Bev, and of clearly Mo Bamba being the guy to kind of call him on it here. And in the final tweet that Mo Bamba tweets out surrounding this whole situation, he says, furthermore, if I'm top 5, where do you rank after letting homie talk to you like this? At Pat Bev Pod, at Dr. Umar Johnson. Now that specific tweet there, what that was Dave Portnoy sitting courtside with Adam Ferrone there. So Roan, his podcast co-host, and Dave Portnoy, who's the founder and owner of Barstool. So there's plenty of opinions on Barstool and Portnoy in general. The actual video itself essentially was Portnoy saying how I pay your bills and talk about the podcast and kind of chirping him from the sideline. It was at a Celtics-Bucks game. Portnoy, a pretty well-documented Celtics fan. So there was kind of the tones that he was addressing there. And again, like I understand the poor outlook here. But again, I'm going to kind of leave that one alone at that. And the final tweet that I did bring up here is, but like you say, love gang, y'all go subscribe to the pod at PatBevPod. So if you really want to put on the tinfoil hat and have your conspiracy theories, I do think this is something that drives clicks, drive views, and that's what Pat Bev is all about. Whether it is ruffling feathers, whether it is something that he wholeheartedly believes, whether it was a fun-loving conversation or something that was meant as a little bit of a shot, the bottom line is this translates to more views and more money for Patrick Beverley specifically, which is his goal in all of this. And again, I've highlighted this before, but I believe, and you guys feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but I do believe Patrick Beverley is the first active athlete to be making more off the court than on the court, that he's still on a veteran's minimum contract by NBA standards, and my understanding is that his contract with Barstool is for more than that. So shout out to Pat Bev for getting it done off the court, and he did address Mo Bamba's comments directly on Twitter as well. So to pull up Pat Bev's comments here, him quote tweeting the initial tweet from Mo and saying, "Love Mo, always love. I said what I said, though." So Pat Bev, as expected, not backing down from the initial interaction there. And what I do think is interesting, and this was a story that Pat Bev told several months ago, maybe even years ago at this point when the podcast was still fairly recent. He talked about a little bit of a dust-up that he had with Mo Bamba back. I believe he was playing for the Bulls at this point. Mo Bamba was on the Lakers, and they got into a little bit of an altercation during the game where Pat Bev got hit in the eye and was frustrated. So he pulled up to find Mo Bamba after the game, got in his face, and essentially they worked things out from there. They didn't turn into a scrap or anything like that. But I do think it's funny that that is a notable storyline, and who knows whether Pat Bev banked that in the mindset for having this conversation or whatever happened from there. But I do think it's funny how things go and how they become teammates, seemingly become friends and guys that seem pretty friendly. And then, of course, this situation kind of riling things up. Now, the last point that I did kind of want to touch on here, which I think should be the main story here, is Mo Bamba's been playing some pretty good basketball. That this is a guy that I've been underwhelmed by through most of his Sixers tenure, but it's clear that the battle between Mo Bamba and Paul Reed is not over, and Bamba's doing a better job fending for himself than I expected. I do believe that there is something to allowing Bamba to be the starter and bringing Paul Reed off the bench, that I do think that he is a little bit of that type of player that is better as a change of pace, as a change-up, to change the flow of the game, have a different impact from an energy standpoint. I think there is a real conversation to be had and some legitimacy to him being more impactful as a guy coming off the bench. And Bamba has been capable in holding down the fort. And to look at a couple of his recent performances, last night against the Lakers, in his 31 minutes of play, finishing with 11 points, 7 rebounds, also had 3 blocks in the game. Against the Phoenix Suns, just 9-5, 8-4 the game prior, 3-8, 5-5, 5-2, 4-1, 2-6. So the numbers don't jump off the page here, and they likely never will with Mo Bamba. The thing that I will give him credit for is it's felt like there's been a little bit more engagement lately, that he's a little more locked in on a possession-by-possession basis. That's always been my biggest frustrating point. It's incredibly mind-numbing and frustrating when he's a guy that struggles to get rebounds when you're 7 feet tall, and that's really a redeeming quality. Now, there are areas where he shines well above expectations. As a three-point shooter, I think he's really solid in a way that the Sixers haven't truly had in a big man, and I do think this presents some interesting lineup flexibility. I think it allows the Sixers to play some 5-out basketball, has opened the paint for Tyrese Maxey and Kyle Lowry to be able to attack in different ways. So there are areas that you can use his game, which I think are useful. Sixers even have him as kind of a corner 3 shooter in a lot of sets, which is not something I expected from a center position. So shout out to Mo Bamba for being capable there. The shot blocking kind of comes and goes. There's still guys that finish around him far too easily for my liking, but there are moments where he will get a guy. He'll pin a guy. He'll have an opportunity and make a big play on the defensive end. So overall, Mo Bamba, I think, has been a net plus in recent games, and I do think that's notable to watch. But I do want to counteract that by addressing that Paul Reed's the obvious guy that he's eating into the minutes. Now, when Joel Embiid returns to the floor, this essentially becomes a non-issue. That Joel Embiid is going to be shouldering significantly the load as far as minutes go from a center standpoint, but there's still going to be a backup center position to be won. That should not be removed from Paul Reed. That regardless of the case of him being better as a change of pace, of him being more productive off the bench, the bottom line is Paul Reed's still a better basketball player than Mo Bamba, and I don't think there's been really a second of Paul Reed's career in which that has not been true. For Paul Reed specifically, I'm seeing progress in his shot development, his shot creation, just his comfortability, whether it is catch and shoot opportunities. He's taking guys off the dribble a little more. There is the argument that I would rather him play in his wheelhouse a little bit more than he has been of late, but I'm impressed with him pushing the boundaries, and frankly, why not? The team has has needed of late, that they need offense from somebody, and I do think Paul's been very good. So I do think that's an intriguing storyline to follow moving forward, and it will be interesting to see how those minutes sort out when things are said and done. But appreciate all you guys for tuning into this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments on both my kind of conversations here between Paul Reed and Mo Bamba, as well as the Mo Bamba and Pat Bev little spat. That I do think this is a guy that it's pretty funny for how much he runs his mouth, for a guy that in the end will be remembered as nothing more than an NBA role player, and a really decent one at that. I like Pat Bev. I wish this wasn't going down the path that is going down, but he's going from a guy that I believed was ready to be crowned as an all-time fan favorite in Philadelphia to a guy that's just going to be remembered as an enemy. And that is unfortunate. I hope that there isn't too much noise coming out, and he's going to be absolutely insufferable in a 7-game series if the Sixers do draw the Bucks. But we will see if that is the case. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like, and dropping your thoughts in the comments. And we talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.